Hey, hello everybody.
Hello.
How are you all doing?
We're doing great. How are you?
I'm good. So this is our first tri-national screen time broadcast as part of Virtual Design Festival. So first of all, hello Shanghai. Hello, can you hear me, guys?
Hello, hello. We can't see you, but hello.
Because the screen is about 5 miles away from you, looks like. So we have in Shanghai, we have Yuichiro Hori, who's the founder and CEO of Stella Works, and Linda Neri and Hu, co-founder of Neri&Hu Architects. Hi, how are you doing? Where are you exactly? Tell us where you are.
We are in Shanghai. We can't get out. This country is closed.
I think specifically, we're in the office and showroom of Stella Works.
Correct.
Yeah. And where exactly is that in Shanghai for people who know Shanghai?
It's in the Jing'an district. I don't know if you know that as well, but it's in the middle where the shopping, I would say shopping district is. Shopping district in Shanghai.
Very central.
So we are downstairs, cool. And the office is upstairs in the same building. So very convenient.
So I'm in London and you guys are in Shanghai, and then we're going over to Copenhagen, where we have Peter Bungo Ritzo and Senior Bundeslev Hendrickson of Space Copenhagen. Hi there.
How are you?
Hello, how are you?
I assume you're in Copenhagen. I didn't check actually. Are you in Copenhagen?
We indeed are. And, we haven't been anywhere like everyone else for the past 3 months. So
no.
Yeah.
Seems like we're going on a plane in a couple of days for the first time in months.
It's going to be very,
so
very
exciting.
Where are you going?
Antwerp.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're opening a restaurant there. Hopefully next week. It was due like months ago for this whole thing. So
some kind of normality returning then. So we're going to see 3 brief presentations which explain what Stella Works is and the relationship between the brand and Neri&Hu and Space Copenhagen. But first of all, before you give us your presentation, Yuichiro, tell us a little bit about yourself and about the brand. Just give us a quick introduction.
We founded this brand in 2012. We launched in Milan, so it's exactly 8 years ago. So we are trying to create a brand that is from Asia, because nowadays most of the brands always coming from Europe. But Asia, I moved from Tokyo to Shanghai in '99, and I saw lots of manufacturing capability here in Shanghai. And also, like Tokyo, it's no more possibility to produce furniture in the city. But this is my factory, and actually we have more buildings. So right side and left side and back, we have 5 buildings in total. And this is still part of Shanghai. So we are producing all of the Stella Works piece here. But actually, this factory we founded in 2008. It's prior to Stella Works. So 2008, I started the manufacturing by myself and together with my French partner Laval. And this factory is a kind of a hybrid factory. So we brought lots of Japanese production know-how and operation and kind of a Japanese production systems we installed in this factory. And together with my French partner, so French technique and traditional French manufacturing way, we installed. So lots of French technicians there are living in Shanghai and working with me and working with the Chinese workers. And of course, it's a hybrid, it's the collaboration with the Chinese resource, because this Chinese resource, they have lots of the very talented the workers, technicians, and also lots of materials. So lots of materials we can buy locally. So that's a brief introduction of the factory. Then, of course, unfortunately, we met Linda and Rosanna in Shanghai, and they're a great architect. And when we are traveling Japan, we discuss about the future direction of Stella Works and how to create and how to make our Asian brand better. And so we are meeting in Shanghai every week. So this is the base, but our business is always global. So this is more like a manufacturing. So I just want to introduce briefly about the collections that we are supposed to launch in Milan this year, but yeah, due to Milan cancellations. So we're doing the digital launch right now. So this is a new collection from Nendo. And this year to next year, we are inviting 5 new designers from Stella Works. So one is a Nendo. So they are also Japanese. So from a Japanese community, we invited Nendo as one of the new designer. And also we invited Michele De Lucchi from Italy. And also one more Italian, Luca Nichetto. And he's designing the beautiful lighting that we are launching very soon. And also Bassan Fellows from New York, and Sebastian Hackner from Germany. So this is a new talent designer we Stella Works, we invited. So this is another collection from Nendo. This is a mirror collection we call Frame collection. So very minimal, but beautiful design from Nendo. So this is another design. It's actually, he's a Norwegian designer, Hargay. So he's our existing designer.
You still there, Yuichiro? Is that the end of your presentation?
Did they fall out?
I think Shanghai has frozen on us. Let's wait a few seconds, see if they come back. Otherwise, we might have to go over to Copenhagen and see your presentation while we try and get them back.
Yeah. Well, it is quite a distance for these signals to travel, though. Huh? How's it gone so far?
We've had a few little freezes, but by and large, everything's worked out quite well. Why don't we jump to Copenhagen? Peter and Senior, why don't you give us your presentation while we see if we can unfreeze Shanghai? So first of all, tell us a little bit about yourselves. Before you jump into the presentation, tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Sure. I mean, well, hence the name. We're from Copenhagen. We're from the Nordic countries, and our company name is Space Copenhagen. And we're a duo. I'm Peter. This is Signe, and we've been working together for a long time. And I think we met Stella Works and Yuichiro from the very beginning. They just founded the company, and we're sort of looking for a direction. And we were introduced and fell into conversation about this kind of wonderful kinship that exists between certain Asian aesthetics and Norwegian aesthetics, or the Nordic sort of sense of lifestyle. And this notion of dwelling upon sort of a cultural discourse, as well as the artisanship of materials, and especially natural materials, was something that became very sort of pivot point in terms of the discussions we had. We agreed that we would try and do a couple of collections, see how it goes, and that was sort of the starting point from our side, and that must have been 10 or 11, just about when Stella Works was conceived from Yuichiro's hand. I think also, I mean, it was our first sort of encounter working with a manufacturing entity placed in Asia, and as such, it was a huge learning experience, also on a cultural note. And I think we work with a multitude of manufacturers, but the speed and the intensity of working with Stella Works has always sort of been quite amazing from our perspective. The first collections were sort of conceived from here in Copenhagen, a bunch of sketches that we brought up on a plane, and then we flew out to the factory that Yuichiro showed an image of just a second ago. And then instead of waiting for a manufacturer to do prototypes, we were just actively at the site for 10 days, drawing details, and then the shop would produce either whole samples or cutout samples. It was extremely dynamic, and it was such a wonderful process in terms of developing a piece of furniture that it was so, from a craft perspective, it was so extremely hands-on that we tested an abundance of sort of joint possibilities, how to stretch materials and such. It was a very unusual and very satisfying way of working, essentially from our point of view. And from there on, we've just slowly developed the collections to have more and more pieces and more new sort of components to collections as the years have gone. And I think sort of generally we launch for them each other year. It says we can't share because somebody else is sharing, so I'm not really sure how we do this.
Okay, let me check with my technical guy, Seb. Space Copenhagen is something they can't share, but we've got Shanghai back. This is really exciting. This is like sports broadcasting in the 80s. Having to make it up as you go along. Are we going live now? No, we're not. We're going to Copenhagen. Glad to have you back. Why don't we jump back now to, I'm sorry, Space Copenhagen, we'll come back to you in a sec, but I think we're teed up to see Neri&Hu's presentation next. Is that right? Could that be the way it's going to work?
We actually, Marcus, we actually heard you quite clearly. We heard Peter and you guys talking. We just couldn't see you.
Yeah, you froze on us. Yeah. Okay. So who's going to go next on the presentation? Do you want to see if you can run your presentation, Lyndon? Sorry that if the order's got a bit.
It's okay. Why don't you go to the presentation then? We're going to share.
We are sharing now.
Yeah, we can see it. Got it.
Okay. Can you see?
So
got it.
Marcus, but we're going to talk a little bit differently. We're going to talk about, Rosanna and I are going to share about the idea of total design and how this ideology informed us in terms of how we advise or practice, but also at the same time how we advise and in many ways help Stella Works and bring it to sort of a global point of view and a platform, inviting obviously many other designers to come in with this platform and notion in mind.
Okay, so very quickly, of course, we all know the word the term total design came from Walter Gropius. But in fact, what a lot of people probably don't know, that the very first time this set of words came together was actually from the music world. It was from the opera. And so I think obviously it was also in Germany. So I think Gropius kind of picked up the notion of total design and started talking about total design in architecture, in industrial design, interior design, and so on and so forth. And I think a lot of people who know Neri&Hu understand why we are so kind of close to the ideology of total design, because we take part in not just architecture, but sometimes urban planning, often interior design, and then also industrial design. And so our role, I think, within Stella Works, obviously, is a creative director, and then we also create a few products for them as industrial designer. But the basis and the foundation of a lot of these concepts actually came from architectural considerations and interior design considerations. So just to give everyone a little bit of a background, some of the projects that we like to look at. This one on the screen is by Alvar Aalto, obviously, Palermo Sanatorium. What is interesting, next page, is that you see, he is totally obsessed, not with just the architecture and the interior formation of the spaces, but also with all the objects that he designed specifically for the patients here. So from the lighting, where you never see direct light, that gives glare in your face. They're all indirect lighting, and also, the sink that has a very high backsplash, so the patients can wash their hands without getting wet, and then also the use of green on a lot of the metal surfaces. It's easy to the eye. So, you know, these kind of projects for us very early on was very inspirational. And the next page, we will see this is more about the representation of total design, how it actually informs us about, and you know, if you're an architect, you're a designer, you can see this drawing, it looks like there's a lot of detail in it, but in fact, you can never really build with a drawing like this. But what it shows you is this representation, this ideal of, you know, the idea of total design guiding Atelier Bow Wow, and also, you know, architects and designers like us, where we are looking down into every detail of the interior as something that informs the total space and the total design.
So if you look at Eileen Gray, Marcus, in 1929, this is in many ways her first building, and oftentimes what we don't know is the fact that most pieces inside the interior has already been designed by her. So from carpet to paintings to walls. And so when people come and see that house, they often wonder, that's pretty amazing, it's so complete. But when in fact, she spent a lifetime developing many of these products, wall conditions, and the apparatus and the furniture around it. So the idea of this total design is not just, you know, what Rosanna talks about, Bauhaus movement or Art Nouveau. It's not so much a stylistic thing, but it's a mandate to really control design totally. So we're going to show you a few of our projects, which we did, and I think you're quite familiar with it. I think the notion of total design here, both from history, bringing it all together, including all the graphics. This was perhaps one of our first architectural projects, so fairly significant. That's the reason why we're showing you.
This project is Design Republic, and the idea of total design here is that it's also kind of designing from the business ground up, and the reconstruction of the old British police station and turning it into kind of a design commune. There's a showroom, there's a one-room hotel upstairs, and also we did a lot of the photo shoots of Stella Works products, and the right image is a series called Utility. We have lounge chair and chairs, and it's one of the most popular pieces that we designed for Stella Works.
For the chapel, we did both the exterior and interior, but I think what you're seeing here is just a chapel, but actually it's a bigger development with housing and other retail component that starts to stitch the whole village together. This is the beacon of the whole development, or it was seen as a beacon, and therefore the totality you can kind of see, not just from the idea of the carving of these public spaces, but all the pieces from the pews to the lights.
And this is Sawasu, it's their flagship store, and here it starts from the branding, the brand image, and then using the brand, turning it into different kind of layers of graphics that became screens, and that became kind of the space. And within it, we also designed many products, and up on the rooftop, we're using our Ming chair that we designed for Stella Works as an outdoor seating.
And at the end, this is about total design from both architecture. It's probably the first project that we've incorporated landscape into our project in a rural setting. And also that's a conscious decision on our end as a practice to now start working outside of the city. But more interestingly so, to incorporate many of the rural issue that's very important in the country we practice. And you can kind of see a lot of the chairs, some of which have been custom designed by Stella Works as well. So that's our presentation, Marcus, in a nutshell, very quickly, just to give you a glimpse of our practice and our association with Stella Works.
Great, thank you very much. And you're the creative directors of of Stella Works. So how did that relationship come about? What's the story?
We actually, it was interesting because we started designing for them. Initially, they had an amazing creative director by the name of Thomas Leike, who brought the brand to an amazing level. It was Thomas Leike who actually introduced both of us to Hori-san. We didn't really know each other. I would probably argue Hori-san wasn't sure if we're the right fit at that time, but Thomas Leike was really good and focused in saying, look, these guys would be good for you. And we start with a small collection. Actually, it's right there. That's probably our first utility chair. And it just grew organically. I think we weren't thinking that we were gonna do a lot of furniture with Stella Works. We just did something that was also very much needed in our project. And the collaboration went very well.
And Yuichiro, you showed us a load of a bunch of new products that you're launching. So thank you very much for launching them through Virtual Design Festival. That's a great honor. And I know we're going to be featuring them on the website soon. But what else are you going to do in terms of launching, given that most of the design fairs so far this year haven't happened? How will there be a physical launch soon as well?
Yeah, we are always planning, but now our plan is more like individual private event. So we have a strong business partner in Europe, and they handle a whole the company, Danish company called Neri&Hu. So they handle the whole European distribution. So we are setting up a showroom one by one right now. So we are planning to invite our client to our showrooms. But Shanghai might be we join a local event in fall. It's a Design Shanghai, but still in discussion.
Okay.
Some of the pieces we possibly want to launch to next year Milan.
Okay, so next year in Milan.
Yeah.
It's going to be a big one.
Coming back to Milan next year.
Yeah. Okay, right, now switching continents again. Let's go back to Copenhagen. Peter and Senior, maybe you can give us your presentation now.
Sure. So let's see if we succeed this time. Yeah.
Yep, we can see that.
Can you see it?
I can see the top of the PDF, but the screen's black apart from that. Is there, maybe it's a blank page?
No. It should. You can see the whole picture now?
Yeah, I can see it with the PDF stuff around the edges. It doesn't seem to be working when you go to full screen. Maybe just show it as you were showing it before.
Okay.
There are some gremlins in the works today, that's for sure.
True. We'll make it slightly bigger then.
We have the same problem of it being black.
Yeah.
I think you'll have to do it like that.
Okay, but we're fine. I think we're gonna focus a little bit on some of the products that we've been fortunate to develop with Stella Works. We're sort of very much aligned with the thinking of total design and the approach that Neri&Hu explained in how you go about it. We started out very much sort of rooted and being linked to this this phenomenon of Nordic cuisine. It was sort of a little bit by accident we got tangled in with sort of the developments of the restaurants like Norma and Geranium in this part of the world. I think it was fueled very much by that we sincerely believe that design is linked to behavioral aspects, and that there is this wonderful sort of connection between a space and everything within the space, and then the experience that is to unfold. So a lot of our products, they sort of originate out of that sort of holistic approach, where before we think about what it is, how it looks, what color it has, we're very sort of concerned and very interested in about what should it fulfill, how should it feel, what role does it have. This very specific chair you're looking at is called a slow chair. And it is a little bit by purpose that it has this name. It is for a restaurant also here in Copenhagen called 108 out of the Norma group. And it clearly has certain characteristics that point to a sense of mid-century Nordic modern. But however, it also does have small accents of something that you could argue was of Asian origin. And that is exactly what has defined our relationship, working our design ethos in terms of working with Stella Works, was trying to see how can we bring sort of our tradition, our design history and our approach and merge it with something, try to do hybrid states of inspiration. And when you look at the armrest, these small sort of pointy ends to the armrest or sort of small motifs that we sample out of certain Chinese and Japanese motifs and then try to combine with a sense of our own history.
But I think also it's important to note that also it's an important topic when we speak about our collaboration with Stella Works, that we have always been extremely fascinated, also before we started working with Stella Works, fascinated by the Japanese and the Asian minimalism and the way they go about sort of craftsmanship and tactility, materials and combinations of different types of surfaces. But I think what's interesting, because we always had this feedback system, even from the 50s, where a lot of our great masters were deeply inspired by Japan, actually sort of the Japanese and the Asian sort of codes of minimalist design reach back to the 17th century, whereas ours may be only united in the 50s here. But we always felt a certain sort of recognition in that filtering of detail and manifesting into very sort of subtle motifs. But I think at the same time, I think it's important to state that we always felt sort of the curiosity towards Japan and to Asia is that they have for sure a more how do you say, spiritual or mindful kind of angle to their the purpose and the design, whereas ours might be slightly more functional, a little bit more sort of on a practical note, minimalist. And we have sort of tried over the years also to fuse some of that curiosity that we have always felt towards the Asian and the Japanese minimalism into our, sort of intuitively into our projects.
I think one of the things that we enjoy about it is that there's this notion of how can you treat a given material, how can you understand sort of the embedded palette of qualities that exist in a piece of metal, in a piece of wood, or in leather, or in stone. And then saying sort of a certain humbleness in terms of the design, saying, well, a design being sustainable as per definition is secured if it has a long lifespan. And allowing the product, allowing the solutions to actually develop, saying when it changes hand from the very first instance, it undergoes transformation by the simple notion of usage. And if materials allow for that to happen, then we like that transformation. We like that sort of bearing witness to life as it unfolds, as a way of conditioning, but also enhancing the virtue and the value of a piece of design. So it's something that we've been very focused on in terms of our development with Stella Works, that these are sort of both cultural, but also very craft and very sort of conscious about the lifespan of something, has been very instrumental for our approach to all the designs that we've done as a collaboration. This was also one of our very first designs, and it's called the Wren collection. And it really got on its feet when we rebuilt Norma a couple of years ago, and they needed a lounge. And for that purpose, we extended this collection to have lounge furniture and lounge sofas, etc., etc. And it's been quite sort of a method for us to work is to identify and embed a sense of DNA into a piece of design, but then securing that the DNA has sufficient potential to actually extend to a collection.
But I think also, especially also in this, for this chair, this whole sort of notion of us being inspired by the Japanese kind of small accents of something that has an intuitive relation to nature. It has sort of components that relates both to an animal or to something that has a richness and a comfort which we normally don't see in the same sense in Scandinavian design. So it's sort of for us a constant balance to try to find these small motifs that we somehow feel that we sort of still relate to our part of the world, but at the same time, it sort of also has something where it sort of elevates it to sort of cross-culture somehow. And we love that. It's a very sort of interesting balance act to work with, because it's so small sort of details that does the sort of that makes the difference.
I think this is another good example. It's another collection also very early on called Luna. And what we also really work a lot with is hospitality concept as such. And what actually is the very exciting part of that is it's not necessarily the end design, but more the process of trying to understand social behavior, sort of reaching from the intimacy of the confinement of a bedroom to the very social impact of having sort of open lounges. What does that require of furniture? What circumstances do these pieces need to accommodate for that aspiration to unfold sort of seamlessly and also with a certain conviction? And that train of thought is something that we definitely strive to put into our extension of our collections and try to have that mindset, that span and that ability to translate into different contexts of social interaction. Clearly, this is a wonderful piece for standing middle of the street. So that was designed especially for that purpose. It is also belonging to the Luna collection. Another of our urban landscape pieces. This is a modular sofa called Infinity, and the whole idea of this is with all modular sofas is how can you design something with a minimum of components for the maximum degree of flexibility and variation. So this is just one of these examples. But sort of saying we're sort of stretching, well, that was actually the last slide, but we're sort of stretching from very sort of wooden, natural material based, fully upholstered collections, but always with this same kind of insistence on a mindset relating to both cultural aspects, but also to the sense of materials and to how it has a user impact. I think that was it from our side.
Great, thank you very much. Do you want to unshare your presentation then? And there's a few things I'd like to put to all of you, that I mean, this idea of cross-culture, of a hybrid between the Scandinavian minimalist traditions and Japanese minimalist traditions. Yuichiro, do you think that these different aspects of design that are feeding into Stella Works could potentially create a sort of new hybrid style?
Yeah.
Is that
so.
even the intention?
Yeah. So quite often I'm talking about a good example, like the Japanese kimono. It's because lots of kimono manufacturers, they are trying to export kimono out of Japan, but it's in terms of sales, it's very difficult to sell because the lifestyle is different, the culture is different. But if they sell the kimono fabric and making a jacket, that would be totally different things, and they're creating a new value. I think it's like a cross-cultural approach. For me, it's quite interesting. And like the Space Copenhagen, Neri&Hu, what I like, both of them, they are a signature designer for my brand. But what I like is their design approach is always the same. That is, they are not adding a design on the products, but they are reducing, minimize the design and then make it timeless. So we are not looking for the trends, but what we are looking for is always like a timeless design. So this is what I like.
And Lyndon and Rosanna, you were talking about the total design approach earlier and how that relates to your own practice. But with the brand Stella Works, do you see the family of products that you're helping to curate? Is that total design in itself? Is it important that the pieces that Space Copenhagen produce fit naturally with your products? Is it a total look that you're helping to bring into being?
It's not so much about a total look. If you look at Space Copenhagen's presentation, it's really beautiful because a lot of them didn't really come out of a particular chair, but came out of a need. For instance, in a project, they would do a restaurant, for instance, and that because of that restaurant, that chair was kind of born out of that need. And many of their pieces are very sensitive to a particular condition, which we really like. So Rosanna and we're here not to dictate what the design should be, because then that defeats the purpose. But the idea of the totality and the mindset of making sure that every designer understands wherever they are, whatever they're designing, that it is the totality that they are thinking of, the space and relationship. It's not so much just the piece as an iconography, which a lot of brands create just so for the sake of press. And we're very conscious of that. We're very careful in terms of making sure that the pieces are actually quite spatial. There should be breakthrough for sure in product design. And I think a lot of the designers here are breaking grounds, maybe very subtle and maybe not so loudly. But I think that's where the difference is in terms of timelessness. It still speaks to not just the present time, but also hopefully the next 50 years or 100 years.
And a question for all of you, really. Could all of the products be equally used in all parts of the world, in all situations? I mean, I know that, for example, dining traditions in the East are very different. There's more of a focus on private dining. Also, I heard last time I was in Shanghai that table heights are different in restaurants in China compared to the West. So do you have to chop the legs off the chairs or something if they're for a certain part of the world? Or are we creating a global culture where anything can be used anywhere? I'd like to hear everyone's response to that.
Well, first, it's like on the notion of hybrid design. I think it's worth noting that design always evolves. And even when we say Asian design, you see something like Japanese design. Well, if you backtrack, Japanese design is heavily influenced by China. So you can always identify sort of a discourse of something. But even within our culture, you could say with all fairness that a lot of what defined sort of the Nordic moderns were the notion of travel. It was indeed that confrontation with cultures that lie geographically far apart from our own territory. And it was that encounter brought back and then sort of reprocessed into something. So a lot of our masters have been heavily influenced by cultures outside our own. And I think we're just happy to be a part of a mindset that sort of has that curiosity in terms of having things evolve. But we certainly do share implicit in your question, there's this danger of things becoming too generic if everything is the same everywhere. So we're also very conscious about, as Lyndon puts it, it's like we like something to be born out of something that can be identified. We like having a narrative being associated to an instance, to an act, and to an object, because it gives it identity, it gives it relevance. Now, that's not the same as saying that it can't be used somewhere else, but it gives it a certain sense of anchoring, a place of origin. And I think we all need that. We all need to feel some kind of narrative that has a story that does relate. And then we can decide whether we like the aesthetic or not. That's not the important part. So there is that aspect, and we're very sort of conscious about it. We love, we also even spoke about that now that the notion of the word globalism is sort of fading in terms of its allure, that we like the word planetarism. It has sort of an embedded consciousness around it, and it just realizes, I mean, there's no escape. We are so dependent on each other, but we also don't want to have the same experience everywhere we go. I mean, it's like I don't think we see, when we debate, we don't see Copenhagen replicated in Asia and vice versa. We go there to mirror ourselves by surroundings that are per definition different. And I think our design should reflect that.
But I also think it's a little bit back to the whole way that we are sort of the value package that we put behind it, that we might be just a little bit more kind of down to earth, straightforward here, whereas it's much more exotic for us to go to Asia and things are much more sort of magic and hidden somehow. So, you know, you would go to a restaurant where we designed this chair and you would get a hug from the waiter, but that would just never happen in Japan, because that would be a completely different sort of rituals one way or the other. So it's also about how it's somehow placed into a setting and a scenery and a ritual that makes the sort of the difference of how it's used.
Before I go back to Shanghai, Peter, I'd like to pick you up on this planetarism idea. Is that your concept, or is that something that?
No, it isn't. I would love to take credit for it, but it isn't actually. There's been recently here as a natural sort of discourse on this whole pandemic situation. There's been in some of the media, there's been quite a return to the urge to discuss philosophy, which has kind of, weirdly enough, disappeared from public debate for a long time. And it was just something I picked up in an article as a small part of a sentence, but then it somehow made sense. But no, I didn't sort of invent the term. It was presented as a part of a philosophical discussion. But I just think that the intuitive understanding of the concept resonates with something there's a certain collective understanding of what it implies that seems relevant.
And that is what that instead of like globalization is kind of has an economic significance to it, doesn't it, of global supply chains and the spread of capital and things like that. And I guess planetarism is more that you don't need globalism to still exist, but we're all on the same dot in space. Is that somehow?
Yes. And sort of it's sort of saying, you know, in math you have chaos theory, you know, that everything has a, you know, at least a minute connectedness. And I think, in all honesty, when you look around you, when you just go for a walk, when you just analyze everything that's around it, there's almost nothing that is not composite, that is not put together by labor or resource, something distributed from somewhere else. I mean, the bottom line is we're in it together, all of us.
Back to Shanghai. Over here in Europe, we've been getting quite philosophical in the last few minutes. We kind of wandered away from the original question, but maybe to finalize the discussion, to finish things off, you'd like to respond to both my original question about sort of hybrid spaces and whether things can be used all around the world, and also Peter's point about this notion of planetarism replacing globalism. Any thoughts on that?
I think the world often, I think, not to generalize it, but maybe the difference is not so much the East and West Americas, but more North and South. Just for practical reason, the weather, for instance, in the North tends to be colder, on the South tends to be warmer. People in the North tends to be bigger and taller, and people on the South tends to be smaller. So I think architecture, even if you go to Southeast Asia, the architecture starts to change, becomes more open. The furniture needs to deal with all of that. You know, their use of rattan is more prevalent. When you look at Charlotte Perriand, when she came to Japan, all of a sudden it changes, not because of the materiality, but because it's a particular region that she had to work with. Even within Japan, you know, Tokyo is very different from Fukuoka. Even here in China, there's a big range between Beijing and Sanya. So I think certainly there is a danger of this furniture being able to be globalized, but I think it's more the conceptual nature. That's why I think it's important for us to focus on the idea of the furniture. I remember Konstantin Grischek saying something which I think still to me was resonated very well. He was talking about a chair, and he questioned, should the chair really just be about comfort, or is that the chair, the attitude of the chair should be something else? And I agree with him to a certain extent, because I think the chair is not just about a chair that makes you comfortable. There is a purpose for the chair. Sometimes it is to put on a corner to actually heighten the space, for instance. Sometimes maybe it's used for you to step on it so you can grab something else. I think there are significance to other things, to meaning and purpose. For instance, a high heel, for instance, when a lady wears a high heel, is it the most comfortable? Not necessarily, but certainly from a society point of view, there is a reason behind high heel. And of course, there's a lot of signifier, and I should not be using that as example because Rosanna should be saying that, otherwise I'd get in trouble. But I think the idea of creating many different typology, and you'll see it next year. Actually, we intentionally created a group of other pieces that starts to break away from the normal typology that you see in furniture brands.
Yeah, and I just want to kind of add to a totally different way of looking at this. Obviously, we are different in many ways, and we are similar in many ways. Meaning, like, you know, human beings, no matter where you're from, we share the same. Like generally, the basic body. We have one head, two hands, two legs, and this is something actually I think, you know, Michael Graves, we both worked for Michael Graves for many years, and Michael used to always talk about as a critique for, I guess, ultramodernism. He always wants us to come back to the human body, because he feels that until the body changes, design is not going to shift too far from being close to the scale that we're able to touch and sit and work with what we have. But I'm also thinking about kind of the age-old dichotomy between form and content. And coming back to the furniture brand of Stella Works, I think very early on, we were looking for not so much the form. So I think the form comes from each designer that we choose to work with, because of their sensibility, that because of the capability that they have in dealing with the content that we kind of want to inject into the brand. So the content being, you know, sensibilities to craft and also bring their own culture into these kind of ethos that we want to drive into the DNA of the brand. So obviously, you know, the forms are all different. We use different materials. We express things differently. But I think at the end, maybe because the themes have a certain continuity, so you do see a certain level of coherence within the collection that exists today within Stella Works.
Great. And Yuichiro, any final thoughts from you on our philosophical discussion or the practicalities of making chairs?
I agree with. I think it's furniture is the tools of a daily life, so it must be useful for daily life in our territory, in our market. But also important is it's more and more company, they are selling the furniture online. But I kind of disagree on this one, because the furniture still they need to touch and feel, so sit. So to be honest, I'm not destroying the environment, but I want the customer to use the furniture for a long time, like lifetime. So that's important to feel and touch, and also it's important to know the story, to have a story behind the product. Otherwise, if they are buying only with the designs, sooner or later they'll get bored and they will replace. This is not what we want.
Great. Well, I think that's a great point to end on. Thank you all so much. great to see you again, Yuichiro, Rosanna, and Lyndon. I hope to see you in the real world soon. And same to you, Peter and Sinja over there in Copenhagen, and enjoy your first flight for several months.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Marcus. You look good.
Thank you, Lyndon.
All right, guys.
Always so complimentary.
Thank you.
You're looking good. You're all looking great, by the way.
So are you.
We're all getting older though. I was saying that when I came into the office. It's been so long since we saw everyone that people are sort of getting a bit grayer and a bit older. But
No way to escape it.
I mean, maybe
we're
soon
all
we'll have some filtering mechanisms in the future.
yeah. Well, we're all alive and healthy. That's the most important thing.
Exactly.
And it's been great to hang out with you for the last 45 minutes. Take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.